what it means. All we are interested in now is form. And is the symbol sequence squiggle A an acceptable form? Yes. Is squiggle squiggle A acceptable? Yes. Is squiggle 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 A acceptable? Do not worry about the difference between A and not A and not A. Don't worry about that. That involves the truth of the sentences, which we're not going to look at when we're only interested in whether a symbol sequence is well-formed or not. Truth won't enter the picture until we get to logic, when we're interested in doing something that preserves truth. But right now, we're not interested in that. We're just interested in which symbol sequences are grammatically okay. I can say true and false things, and they're both grammatically okay. I am standing here right now is grammatically okay. I am not standing here right now is grammatically okay. Only one of those sentences is true. The other one is false. But it doesn't matter. They're both grammatically okay. So let me get back to, as everyone, I have to repeat what I said last week. I'm deaf in my right ear. A very bad accident 20 years ago. When I was hit by a pickup truck while I was jogging and thrown 65 feet. So I lost my hearing from my right ear, along with balance.
You left that detail out.
So, yeah, so.
I was going to say, so if it was B squiggle A, would that wouldn't be a word, right?
Is B what?
If it was B squiggle A, and then if it was like squiggle
Oh, okay, good. Suppose I have the symbol sequence B squiggle A. Is that acceptable or not? We don't know yet. We will soon learn it is not a whiff, but we don't yet know that. Okay, we also need rules for the other 4 truth functions. Now notice the squiggle only governs symbols to its right. The other 4 govern symbols to the left and to the right, and needs something on the left and something on the right, A and B. Same thing for the wedge, A, wedge, B. The same thing for if-then, if A, then B, or A, horseshoe, B. And the same thing for the triple bar, A, if and only if B. But that's easy, because we've got variables besides P. So rule 3 is P dot Q is a whiff. Rule 5, P horseshoe Q is a whiff. And rule 6, P triple bar Q is a whiff. So let's just take a look at rule 3. Squiggle A dot B, is that a whiff?
Yes.
Okay. Is that a whiff? Who says yes? Who says no? Okay, it is a whiff. And here's how we got it. B is a whiff. A is a whiff. If A is a whiff, squiggle A is a whiff. So whiff dot whiff by rule 3 is a whiff. Rule 3 says P dot Q, which is another way of saying whiff dot whiff. So you can use these rules to take complex symbol sequences and break them down into the simplest components, which are atomic sentences. Okay, we now need to introduce parentheses. And here is an example of an ambiguous symbol sequence. A wedge B dot C. A wedge B dot C is ambiguous because the dot and the wedge require something on their left and something on their right. The problem is, does B go with the wedge or does B go with the dot? If B goes with the wedge, using parentheses, we would have A wedge B parenthesized and dotting that to C. But if B goes with the dot, we would have B dot C parenthesized and that wedge to A. So number one is A wedge B parenthesized and then dotted to C. Number two is B dot C parenthesized and wedged to A. And one is different from two. So if all you see is A wedge B dot C, that's not a whiff because it's ambiguous. It has two interpretations, 1 and 2. And so you need parentheses to represent each of those interpretations of the symbol sequence A wedge B dot C. And so I'm not going to give you a really fancy Rule 7. Rule 7 will simply state is use parentheses to eliminate ambiguities. If you really wanted to make Rule 7 precise, you would have to talk about how you would determine for every left parenthesis that you found its mate, the right parenthesis. And that gets very complicated when you have very long symbol sequences with subsequences of symbols involving many, many layers of parentheses. So the math students will be happy with this, but the non-math people would not be happy to have a very complex rule that talked about the combinatorics of parentheses, so we're not going to do that. So we'll just leave it as use parentheses to eliminate ambiguities. And we need one more rule because we still have a problem. The problem is the first 7 rules tell us what are whiffs, but there are no rules to tell us what are not whiffs. So that symbol sequence that someone told me about earlier, B squiggle A, we can't say anything about it because none of the rules tell us anything about it. Rules 1 through 7 do not tell us it's a whiff, but that doesn't mean it's not a whiff. So we need a new rule, the last rule, Rule 8. And Rule 8 says anything which is not a whiff by the first 7 rules is not a whiff. So any formula which is not a whiff by rules 1 through 7 is not a whiff. Any formula not a whiff by rules 1 through 7 is not a whiff. Yes?
Is there a way to make like multiple symbols like affect an independent like common sentence? Like, you know how people say like do this and or something? Like, is there like a structure for that?
Yeah, that's something more complex though, and we'll talk about that when we get to truth functions. That's a good question. Yeah, well, how to take, you know, in natural language like and or. Yeah, we're going to get to that, but that's off in the future right now. By the way, Rule 8 tells us where this construction, namely, rules 1 through 7 construct a set of symbol sequences called whiffs. And where does that close off? Where does it stop? Rule 8 tells us that. Doesn't say, actually, what the number is. So if you've had a course in algebra, rules 1 through 7